Hello everyone, welcome to Mystic Unicorn. Thank you all so very much for being here, for tuning in, for joining me for this session. So this is going to be a little bit different than what you guys may have come to expect here on Mystic Unicorn. So let me break it down a little bit. Here on Mystic Unicorn, I place my focus in the realm of interpersonal relationships. So this can be love, friendships, families, maybe even your relationship with yourself. And a lot of all of that is under the realm of, or within the realm of Venus. And so because of this, I want to place an extra focus on what Venus is doing in the sky for us to help give us some insight and some inspiration and some information in terms of what could be going on for you as Venus moves through our sky. So this session is going to be quite different than what you have experienced before on this channel. First of all, the first big difference is that there is no tarot associated with this video. It's already a really long conversation. It's not necessarily going to be this long in the future, but there are a lot of things that I wanted to discuss first to kind of clear the air or lay some sort of groundwork so that we are all on the same page. And then we get into the actual discussion. And that's not going to be a part of these sessions in the future. I just felt like it was important for this first session for us to lay this groundwork. And then also, we're not going to be pulling any tarot cards during this session because this is just a big collective discussion and an analysis of what Venus is doing in our sky over the next few months. And this is a pretty big period. There's a lot to talk about here, so that also adds to the length of this session. So with that said, I have time-stamped this session. You can find the timestamps in the description box below, also in the pinned comment below. With the length of this video, I felt like it was very important for us to have a way to skip through the session, skip through the chapters even, to be able to, take in the bits and pieces that you need to when you need to, or if you want to watch this over a period of time and come back to the specific areas that we discuss in this video. During those times, you have the timestamps here, or if you just can't listen to this all in one place, you have those timestamps so that you can skip through and reconnect with the session at a later date. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Eric. It is so wonderful to meet you all. I am an intuitive tarot reader who has recently got into really studying astrology and helping us with our collective energies and what it is we're going through by really working on understanding what's going on with the astrology, and then also pulling tarot and intuitive messages from there to help the collective expand and grow and go through the lessons and experiences that we need for our soul to develop. I highly recommend that you guys smash that like button for me, as this will help me get this message out to more people. Leave me a comment, definitely leave me a comment in the comment section down below, letting me know how this resonates for you, what this brings up for you. If you want to come back later on after maybe we've gotten through most of this transit or all of this transit and compare that to what happened in your life and let me know down in the comments, I would love to hear from you guys. Also, if you're new, I highly recommend that you consider subscribing, joining the unicorn herd. I'm definitely looking to do more of these videos in terms of talking about Venus's transits specifically in the future. So hit that subscribe button, get all the notifications, and let's have a party with this, yeah? For those of you that may be interested, I am offering a new service now in which I can draw up your natal chart, your birth chart, and we can look at what Venus or how Venus is represented in your chart, whether she's exalted or debilitated, what her aspects are, who's making what aspect to her, and how is that affecting her in your chart. And we can do an overall view of all of that. We could also have a session in which we discuss specifically what this transit of Venus, this current transit of Venus, could mean for you on an individual level. Okay, 2 options there. You could do, you could order a 30-minute video or so in which I record a message for you with your chart intuitively, just talking to you about what I see, what could be affecting you. You also have the option of scheduling a longer session with me, so we could do an hour in which we get to talk face-to-face through Skype, Zoom, or whatever, and we can go through your chart overall and use that hour to discuss a lot of elements in your life. Sorry, don't mind the chickens, but we can discuss the elements in your life, what could be going on for you astrologically, your strengths, your weaknesses, your challenges, and your themes. If anybody is interested in that session or in that service, check the information in the description box below, where you will find my email address. Shoot me an email and I can get you all set up with your own personal session. So before we really get started in discussing what this transit could mean for us as a collective, I want to lay some groundwork in terms of understanding what approach I'm using astrologically when it comes to these transits. So I am approaching astrology from what is considered to be the true sidereal point of view, or the true sidereal practice. What does this mean? Well, first of all, there's going to be a marked difference between the placements of the planets in the signs, as opposed to what you may typically find in mainstream astrology or tropical astrology. For example, say you were born as a Libra sun, yes, in mainstream or tropical astrology. When it comes to sidereal astrology, you, depending on when your birth date is, you may actually be a Virgo sun, okay? So that's one of the big differences. I know when I started investigating sidereal astrology, my placements changed, but it also kind of, when I really started to dig into it, it kind of made more sense. So I want to say, before I go any further, this is not to say that one system is better or more accurate than the other. It's really about what you resonate with the most, okay? So try not to take any of this personally. If you're finding things to be different than you originally thought, I would invite you to keep an open mind and just work on seeing how this translates for you specifically. If you want to compare this energy to your natal chart in another system, that could be a really excellent thing to do in order to give you a full or comprehensive understanding of the energy so far. Okay, now a few other things that I want to note before we move forward. When it comes to true sidereal astrology, there are 2 main factors that are incorporated here that make things different from tropical, mainstream astrology, or Vedic. The first one is that the sign of Ophiuchus, which is the 13th sign, is incorporated into this system, and you will hear me talk about that a little bit as we move forward into an understanding of what's going on here for us. The other thing that I want to point out for the collective here is that with this system, it uses the actual size of the constellations. So not only do we have a 13th sign thrown in there, but also we have a representation of how big or small the constellations actually are. When you look at the sky from an astronomy point of view, not astrology, but astronomy, you can see that the signs are not exactly 30 degrees. Now, obviously, this is going to be affected, first of all, because of the fact that Ophiuchus is thrown in there. But on top of that, we have a difference in the sizes of the constellations. Now, we could get into the full theory behind all of this as to why it was put into place, when it was put into place in terms of mainstream or tropical astrology. But the basic point is that when mainstream or tropical astrology was put into place back in the Babylonian days, everything was shifted to work with the seasons. So that's a big reason why Ophiuchus wasn't thrown in there, because the number 13 is not divisible by 4, right? But then also, because in those time periods we were heavily affected by the seasons, okay, and whatever comes with those seasons, the astrological calendar was placed with that. So in order for everything to fit evenly, everything needed to be made into equal sizes. So that's where we get the 30 degrees for each sign originally having been worked into the chart or the system. But with true sidereal astrology, that's not the case. We take the actual size of the constellations into account. So if you were to look at a chart, you would see that certain signs such as Aries, Scorpio are fairly small, whereas on the other hand, you have signs like Virgo or Sagittarius that are super big. Virgo, in my opinion, as I've come to understand, Virgo is the biggest constellation in our sky. And that is actually kind of beneficial because Virgo is the energy of Virgo surrounds being of service, your routines, your health, your physical wellness, and how you are of service to people and how you are of service to the collective and all that. And that seems to be a very big focus for a lot of us in the world. So I just wanted to point that out there before we get started, just to clear up any misunderstandings as to why things may sound or seem different than tropical or mainstream astrology. Okay, so who is Venus? Venus is associated with money, wealth, possessions, potentially, and your ability to give and receive. And this all has to do with the realm of your personal self and also the realm of your interpersonal relationships. Venus rules Taurus, which is ruler of the second house, which is your house of wealth and values, what it is you do to generate wealth, to make money. And also the things that you value in your life, whether that be material or like say intellectual or emotional values to a certain extent. And then also Venus rules Libra, which is the ruler of the seventh house, which is where you get into the balance and harmony between you and other people, how you interact with other people, your contracts with other people. The seventh house can also be seen as where you deal with legal situations, whether good or bad, okay? So I want to place a focus on Venus for this channel. And so because of that, I'm looking to do more transit reports when it comes to Venus in the future. And I feel like this is actually a really good time to talk about Venus's transit, because Venus will be transiting through Sagittarius throughout the month of November all the way into March of 2022. And with this transit, it's extra important, or there is more emphasis placed on this transit because Venus will be going retrograde during this time. So this is a pretty big moment for your interpersonal relationships and your relationship with giving and receiving. Also your relationship with money and finances. All right, guys. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into the real meat and potatoes of what we're talking about here with this transit. So, Venus is going to be moving through Sagittarius during this time. And this transit lasts from November 2nd of 2021 through March 6th of 2022. And I mean, just having Venus transiting through any sign is worth talking about on this channel for reasons that I've already discussed. But this one has a bit of a marked difference to it, because if you are not already aware, Venus will be going retrograde during this time, okay? But we will get into that further on down the line. That is a big focus of this time period, but again, let's take this step by step. Let's start by discussing what Venus in the sign of Sagittarius represents, okay? Venus in Sagittarius can bring a bright and lighthearted energy and even a spontaneous energy to the realm of your love, interpersonal relationships, your finances. Okay, so Sagittarius is a very expansive sign anyway. Sagittarius is the ruler of the ninth house. The ninth house is all about expansion, higher learning, greater forms of communication, travel, big time travel. And I don't mean just travel between like interstate travel or just in your town. I mean like, I just heard myself say interplanetary travel, which is cool, but like overseas travel and, you know, moving to different locations, experiencing different cultures, different ways of life, learning from that, communicating in those energies. Sagittarius or the ninth house could also represent communication with or between, you know, different languages and all that kind of stuff. Sagittarius is also a very philosophical sign. Sagittarius is where you start to expand on your philosophy. You want to communicate about your philosophy. You want to learn more philosophies. You want to teach your philosophy. If there was any sign that would represent someone being up on their soapbox, it would be Sagittarius. Okay, so with Venus wrapped into this can make you very adventurous when it comes to love and relationships and your finances and that which you find value in. For singles, Venus in Sagittarius may not be the best time to find a long-term partner. Now, that's not always bad. It's not so bad, especially with a lot of the other things that we're going to be talking about here. But if you are looking for a long-term partner, especially during this time, not only with Venus being in Sagittarius, but also Venus going retrograde during this period, this really is not a good time to focus on finding a long-term relationship with someone. This could, especially depending on how Venus shows up in your natal chart, whether it's strong in your natal chart or whether it's a bit debilitated or weakened in your natal chart. This could really color your experiences interpersonally, relationship-wise, romantic-wise, monetarily-wise. It could expand your mind. It could expand on your desire to try new things, to go out there and do new stuff and find new things and learn new things and all that kind of stuff. Experience new things. Experience is a big theme for this transit, okay? And what it is you learn from that experience. But with all of that said, Sagittarius is also a pretty flighty energy sometimes, you know, very here 1 second, gone the next. So any sort of romantic relationships that you may experience during this time may not have much staying power, but that's okay. Don't write that off. Don't discard anything that you experience at this time, because again, it's all about your experience and what it is you can learn from it and how you can transform from it. And we'll get into that further on down the line, okay? Venus in Sagittarius for my singles could definitely be an energy of wanting or desiring to test the waters, all right? So don't expect anything too solid to really come to pass during this time. Not to say that it can't happen, but I wouldn't go into this period with expectations to come out of it with a long-term partner. Okay? For couples, Venus in Sagittarius could bring a time period of a new level of understanding, within your relationship with your significant other. This also could translate into family members too. That just hit me as I'm talking through this. So keep that in mind. Your family, your relationship with your family, whether that be your spouse, your kids, your parents, your aunts and uncles, your grandparents, your nieces and nephews, anything like that. These relationships could be affected during this time, even if you're not single, okay? But for couples, like I said, there's a potential for a new level of understanding that may come about here. You have the energetic opportunity to come to new or different understandings, okay, if you want to take advantage of this potential. Now could be a really great time to test the boundaries of your relationships, but be careful with that, okay? Because there are also a few aspects here that could lead to egotism, okay? Especially with some conjunctions that happen between Mercury, the sun, and Mars, and even the moon at certain points. But again, we'll get into that in the future. You could feel inclined to test the boundaries of your relationships, but really be very cautious and be very careful with that, especially if you're involved with certain people that are pretty shy, that are not really open to the give and take in relationships, of energies within relationships, especially with the Sagittarian energy. There could be a level of detachedness or emotional detachedness that could really make some people single-minded, okay, or very focused on what it is that they want or what it is that's in their mindset. And it may be difficult for some people, especially some people with some strong Mars placements and maybe even strong Mercury placements, like some people that may have Mercury and the Mars conjunct, especially if your sun is involved there. Your personal focus in terms of the realms of relationships, what it is you're dealing with, what it is you're healing, what it is you're working through, could really be in the front of your mind, and you may slip into a period where you completely forget about anybody else's involvement. Okay, so if you are feeling inclined to test the boundaries of your relationships, stay very centered, very grounded, and also work to keep a view of the other people involved in this situation. Okay, be very cautious of that. Now, I do want to say on that note, as I've kind of touched on already, but for some, Venus in Sagittarius may be a fairly uncomfortable time. You may end up coming into contact with certain people that are really gonna push you, really gonna test your boundaries, especially since we have a conjunction between Pluto and Venus during this time period, which again, we'll get into later on. But you really may come up against some people who are really trying to test their waters, test the boundaries. And for some of you that may have some weaker Venus associations, placements, or aspects, this could be pretty difficult for you, okay? For some of you, I'm feeling like you may even want to run and hide, but don't do that. I mean, protect yourself, definitely protect yourself. And if you're really uncomfortable, if some of your boundaries are being pushed in ways that are just not acceptable for you, do what you need to do to maintain your space. Because again, I keep wanting to reiterate this, even though Venus represents your interpersonal relationships, I also feel like during this time period, you have a very strong ability to work on yourself. So if you really need to take time away for yourself to process what is happening for you during this time, take it, okay? Definitely take it. Let's move forward here. Venus in Sagittarius also feels like there is a ton of potential for change and expansion of one's horizons. This transit kicks off in the 9th house. Now, the houses aren't really so important to talk about when we're talking about collective energies. When we get into the houses is when we're talking about you personally. So with that said, if you would like to get a chart analysis or have a session with me to talk about what this Venus transit means for you specifically on an individual level, definitely shoot me an email. My email can be found in the description box below. And I can set you up with either a quick about 30 minute video talking about your Venus personally and how all of this would be transiting for you and how this could be affecting you. We also could do an extended period of like about an hour or so where we can sit down face to face, maybe through Skype or something, and we can talk about it, okay? And we'll have an hour for that. If you're interested in any of those, shoot me an email, all right? But again, the houses for the collective are not so important. The only reason I really want to talk about or mention that this transit of Venus through Sagittarius kicks off in the 9th house is because Sagittarius and Jupiter are associated with the 9th house, okay? Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the ruler of the 9th house. So personal expansion on a soul level could really be accentuated here. So that kind of like sets the tone for this whole transit, in my opinion, okay? With Venus transiting into Sagittarius, and Sagittarius being the ruler of the 9th house, this is a lot of Sagittarian energy associated with this transit. For some of you, also something that we can talk about if you are interested in having a personal session with me, we can also pay attention to what Jupiter or how Jupiter is represented in your chart and maybe see how that could be affecting things for you as well. Moving forward here, before we get into a deeper analysis of Venus transiting through Sagittarius, I think it is important to at least discuss ever so briefly how or what Venus was doing before she reached Sagittarius. So throughout the month of October, we had the transit of Venus through Scorpio and Ophiuchus. Now, Venus exits Scorpio around the 20th of October, and from there enters into Ophiuchus. Venus in Scorpio, depending on how your Venus is represented in your natal chart, Venus in Scorpio could be a really exciting time for you, or it could be a really dark time for you, okay? For me personally, Venus in Scorpio is a really fun aspect. It could lead to a heightened sense of sexuality, sexual activity. Sexual energy also is related to creative energy. So some of you have been maybe feeling very creative during Venus in Scorpio. Some of you may have been feeling very sexually active during Venus in Scorpio, which is a really beautiful thing. But for the collective, having Venus in Scorpio was very timely because in the month of October, we also experienced the stationing direct of Saturn. Earlier in the month. Later in the month, it was Jupiter. We also dealt with a Mercury retrograde throughout most of October. And the month of October, collectively speaking, was a month of personal renaissance. So with everything that you experienced during Saturn and Jupiter retrograde, there was a lot of energy for the collective surrounding your personal relationships and how those interpersonal relationships, both with the external world and with yourself, may have helped or hinder you. Many of us came out of Saturn retrograde with a deeper understanding of how certain relationships may have been holding us back, how certain associations with the outside world may have held us back. And so with Venus transiting through Scorpio during this time, a deeper understanding of your interpersonal relationships was able to be gained. You may have had the opportunity to get down deep down into the reality of your relationships and start to uncover things that maybe were really not so desirable, okay? That's Venus moving through Scorpio. Then Venus entered into Ophiuchus, which to me feels like a healing period, or at least a beginning of the healing period. Ophiuchus is we don't really need to get into too much of what Ophiuchus is in this session, but what I feel like intuitively is that when Venus entered into Ophiuchus, you had a moment to grasp the wisdom. Ophiuchus is visualized as a man holding a snake, and the snake can be a symbol of wisdom. It can also be a symbol of deception. So with that said, over this time period of Venus and Scorpio, transiting through Scorpio, you may have become or had the ability to become starkly aware of how some of your relationships, whether this be interpersonal or your relationship with your finances and abundance, you may have been able to understand where the deception was there, where the snake in the grass was there. And once Venus moved into Ophiuchus, what I'm seeing someone literally taking a hold of that snake, of that wisdom, of that deception, okay? And really starting to gain or start the momentum towards the healing process. And so now, once Venus moves into Sagittarius, that healing process can really start or can really be taken underway, because Sagittarius lends the expansive energy of philosophy and higher understanding, higher awareness, and kind of piecing some of the elements together. Okay, so the moment we've all been waiting for, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's dive into Venus being in Sagittarius. Now, I want to say, just to start, there are a number of key points to understand or keep a marked association of throughout this transit. There are a number of dates here that I want to talk about specifically, which I guess, to be honest, it's not so surprising, because this is a transit that lasts quite a long time, okay? Not to mention the fact, yes, it is a long transit, but also Sagittarius is one of the bigger constellations, and Venus is retrograde throughout Sagittarius during this time. So there's a lot to talk about here. But let's just get into it. Let's start with the beginning of this transit. So the transit really begins on November 2nd. Okay, and the first thing to look at here, or to keep in mind to start things off, to kick off your festivities, yes, on the 2nd, well, between the 2nd and the 6th of November, we have a sextile between Mars and Venus, and then we also have a stellium, which is a big conglomerate of a bunch of planets all in one place, between the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, and Mars. Now, the moon being a part of this stellium isn't going to last very long, okay? So that's not really too much of an energy that I want to focus on, because the moon moves through the planet, or I'm sorry, the constellations at a rate of about every 2 days or so, okay? Of course, depending on the size. Like if the moon was moving through Virgo, it's gonna be much longer than that. But okay, anyway. So, November 2nd through the 6th, we have the sextile between Mars and Venus, and then the stellium between the Sun, Mercury, and Mars. Let's just say that. This transit kicks off with a fairly strong energy with this stellium and also the sextile. Now, this is happening in Virgo, in the constellation of Virgo, okay? So the focus here with this Virgo energy is health, routine, order, and maybe even a consolidation of awareness and understandings, okay? So at this point, during this part of the transit, between the 2nd and the 6th of November, some may be starkly aware of the reality of certain relationships and may be driven to do something about it, and potentially in a very strong or egoic way, okay? Because we do have this stellium between the Sun, Mercury, and Mars. Mars is that planet that brings in the drive, the passion, the one-pointed focus, okay? So with all of this stellium happening in the sign of Virgo, again, there is could be a very stark awareness of what action needs to be taken or what needs to be handled and addressed. But understand that with Mars being a part of this conjunction, or at least this stellium, we should say, there could be an egoic push, an egoic drive. So just be conscious, be aware of that, all right? Now, when it comes to this stellium between the 2nd and the 6th of November, yes, the 2nd and the 6th of November, the sun starts off in Virgo, okay? But by the end of this stellium, towards, I want to say actually about the 3rd or the 4th of November, hold on, let me just check to be double sure. The sun moves into, okay, the sun will be moving into Libra by the 4th, all right? So even though there may be a really strong energy in the beginning of all of this, when it comes to being one-pointed focused on how to fix things for yourself, maybe even for the people around you, the people closest to you, maybe even your family, especially if you have children, at the beginning of this, by the 4th, the sun moves into Libra. So there could be a potential for balancing out, okay? It may not be, even though you may still be one point focused, there's a level of balance and harmony between yourself and other people that is able to help maybe alleviate some of this egoic tension during this period, okay? So yeah, what started as a self-oriented energy may quickly move to a more collective or balanced focus, which is a really good thing. Okay, so the next thing to be aware of is between the 22nd of November through the 17th of December. So leading up to this time, Venus will be continuing her movement through Sagittarius, okay, which is lending values of expansion and communication, wanting to try new things, wanting to learn new things, all right? And it's really kind of interesting because, and this is a part of the reason why I really want to make it a point to say that this really isn't the time to try to start or try to get a stable, lasting relationship together, other than the fact that Venus is moving through Sagittarius, which kind of lends a flighty or back and forth energy. We then have this conjunction between Venus and Pluto. It's so interesting because I was watching this happen in the chart and it's like, okay, we're getting to the end, we're almost out of Sagittarius, and then this conjunction with Pluto happens, and all of a sudden now right after this conjunction starts, then Venus starts to go retrograde back through Sagittarius, okay? So let's talk about this. This may be fairly epic, okay, between Venus conjuncting Pluto. It's as if this whole time period of Venus's transit through Sagittarius has been setting the stage for this very moment, the moment where Venus conjuncts with Pluto. Venus conjuncting with Pluto can bring explosive energies, okay? Explosive emotions, eruptions, massive change, or maybe for some of us personally, a stark awareness, a really stark awareness by this point as what may need to change. Something that's coming up for me intuitively for you guys is that some of you may actually start to get into relationships with new people. And these relationships may have been going well in the beginning and you feel like you're getting a really good foothold or a stronghold in a relationship, and then boom, before you know it, or all of a sudden, shit hits the fan and things are blowing up. But for some of you, if you end up experiencing something like this, I feel very specifically that you have been getting into a relationship cycle or a relationship drama that is exactly the point of what needs to change for you. And so that could be what really makes this such an explosive moment, because all of a sudden now, with something that may have felt like it was going well, now all of a sudden you find yourself right back where you didn't want to be. Maybe even right back where you were trying to work yourself out of when all of this kicked off with the stellium in Virgo, in the beginning of this transit, right? And because of that, that can make people really angry, really sad. It could throw you into a sense of depression really super easily. But what I want you to keep in mind is that no matter what is happening throughout this transit, you guys, everything has the potential to work in your favor. If you can just get through what is coming up for you and what needs to be healed, by the end of all of this, things could really transform for you, okay? Yes. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say there. Yeah, don't hate on Pluto during this time, because he really just wants to help you further expand. Pluto is associated with Scorpio, which takes us back to what was uncovered while Venus was in Scorpio. So with that said, this probably won't be comfortable, as Pluto seems to be forcing change for you. But again, it just feels like, for some of you, it feels like you may have forgotten about what it is that needed to change. And then you got into these relationships and it felt comfortable. It was the same old, so you just went with it because it was comfortable. And now once we hit this conjunction, things are exploding in your face, but it's happening for a reason. You did not do anything wrong. You did not backtrack like crazy. And we're gonna explain why as we move forward here, okay? So that takes us to the next step. Between December 18th and January 27th, Venus is now moving through her retrograde through Sagittarius. Now, Venus and Pluto made a conjunction just as Venus began her retrograde, and Venus in retrograde can bring a sudden stop or a sudden fizzling out of the momentum in certain relationships, okay? So if Venus being in Sagittarius wasn't bad enough for making relationships a bit unreliable or have less than valuable staying power, now Venus is in retrograde, which is adding a level of deconstructing your relationships, okay? I always look at any sort of retrograde as a time period to take this motion, this retrograde or reversed motion, into the past to kind of break apart what has been solidified so that you can understand it better and you can reconstruct it to a specific state. So for some of you, you're already starting, at least maybe through listening to this right now, or as you experience all of this, you may be starting to understand why or how all of this could work in your favor. Okay, so what may have been working in your relationships may suddenly come to a stop. Again, be careful of new relationships or alliances that were formed since the beginning of this transit, because all of a sudden things can change. Momentum may suddenly stall, or old or uncovered issues may suddenly surface. That's that's Pluto, okay? That's Pluto coming through and saying, and digging all this stuff from the deep depths of the underneath the surface and sticking it right in your face, all right? But keep in mind, this is all meant to help you expand. The feeling here with Venus going through retrograde during this time is what absolutely needs to change, okay? Also, be very careful of power struggles here, as Pluto can lead to this. This conjunction between Venus and Pluto could really lead to this here, especially for those of you that may seem to be coming out on top of this situation or winning to some extent or some semblance in this situation. Pluto is kind of Pluto kind of represents the energies of individuals like the character Maleficent, or any sort of supervillain that is just like deeply obsessed with power, all right? And then also with some of the stuff that's happening between Mars and Mercury here throughout this transit, power struggles could be a pretty big thing, you guys, so just be very careful, okay? Now moving forward, by December 28th, while Venus is still in her retrograde, there is a stellium between Venus, Pluto, and Mercury. All right, so Pluto is still involved in this, but with Mercury coming into the picture, there is potential for learning, okay? Expansion, deeper expansion, more learning. You may really start to get it. You may find it easier to comprehend what Venus is churning up, well, what Venus and Pluto are churning up for you at this time. You may feel more inclined to communicate about what you're experiencing. During this stellium between Venus, Pluto, and Mercury, you may want to actually seek out communities or counseling surrounding your experiences. As I was really feeling through this energy, it came up that for some of you, community groups, therapy groups, groups that are aligned with your personal experiences and discussing those personal experiences may be really helpful. Awesome for this time, awesome for you during this time, okay? You may also have an easier time understanding your experiences on an intellectual level between the people around you. So if there are really some big discrepancies between you and someone else, this time period could provide you with an extra boost to really get an understanding of the other person's perspective. To me, Mercury in Sagittarius sets the stage for epiphanies, okay? Suddenly coming to a higher awareness of something suddenly becoming more understandable for you on a much deeper or intrinsic level, okay? This is a very spontaneous energy, so spontaneous inspiration, spontaneous understandings are very possible with Mercury being in Sagittarius. Also keep in mind that emotional outbursts could be a thing, you guys, okay? Some things that come up could have been a long-term struggle for you, all right? So frustration and emotional fatigue could really help color this situation and tip the scales in a not so favorable way, all right? Also, try not to push or rush comprehension or communication with yourself or even with others as you have the rest of this retrograde period of Venus to work this kind of stuff out, okay? So don't really rush anything. Just allow the fire, the inspiration, the passion of Sagittarius to really help you in as best way that it can. So the next thing to discuss here would be on January 2nd, we have a new moon in Sagittarius. So much Sagittarius energy throughout this transit, you guys, okay? So this is a really big thing. But with this new moon in Sagittarius happening on the 2nd of January, 2022, this is the perfect time to take your experiences and set intentions to make changes. So take what it is you've been experiencing over this time. Okay, you really, by this point, you really may have a deeper understanding of what needs to change, what needs to go, what absolutely has to go, and what can stay. So by the time we reach the new moon here on the 2nd of January, in 2022, this is a time for you to start setting your intentions, putting your wishes in place. If you want to take a meditative moment and just with yourself and write down a list, maybe journal. Throughout this time period, journaling may be a really excellent way for you to be self-reflective, okay? But take a moment to write down and list out what it is that you desire to manifest in your life in the realm of Venus throughout the rest of this retrograde period and also even into the direct motion of Venus, okay? All the while, during this new moon in Sagittarius, Venus is conjunct the sun, infusing your soul with this info, bringing you a deeper understanding on a soul level. This also has the potential to provide you with a sense of grace and unconditional love for yourself. So really work on cultivating that, especially if you're taking a moment to sit down and write out your desires, write out what it is that you want to start manifesting, writing out or identifying what seeds you would like to plant to grow in the future once we move forward. Allow yourself to be graceful with yourself. Allow yourself to be unconditionally loving with yourself. Allow yourself to be receptive to your own needs and your own desires, okay? Some of you may really want to take a step back and really just focus on this manifestation for your own self. Obviously, for people who are in committed relationships or who have families or people that are dependent on them, you can't be completely 100% selfish here, but also keep in mind, guys, that if you really really want to be in service or be there for your community, for the people around you, for your loved ones, for your children, for your family, you have to make sure that you have a solid, stable foundation within yourself. You have to make sure that you're being there for yourself so that you can be there for others. So the manifestations that come from the new moon here really may be just manifestations in your personal realm, okay? And they're really, don't let anybody shame you for that, because there's really nothing wrong with it, okay? So moseying right along here, we're reaching the end of this situation, but the next thing that I want to focus on for the collective is the full moon, which follows the new moon. So the full moon is going to be around the 17th and the 18th of January 2022, and the full moon is going to be in Cancer. Now, Cancer is ruler of the 4th house. This is the house of your nurturing realm, okay? So the 4th house represents your family and your home life, but it also represents the sense of nurturing energies and nurturing environments, surroundings when it comes to you personally, okay? The 4th house represents the space or the environment that you have or that you have cultivated to really allow yourself to be nurtured by yourself and to flourish, okay? Because then after the 4th house is the 5th house, which is ruled by Leo. And that's the house of personal expression and creativity and fun and joy and children, okay? The 5th house can also be seen as your house of your inner child. But your inner child, or this sense of personal expression and exuberance, could very well be hindered or debilitated depending on the reality of the nature of the energies in your 4th house, okay? People that are feeling really less than nurtured and loved tend to have a lot of trouble expressing themselves or feeling safe enough to truly express their authenticity. And so that's where the energies of the 4th house really come into play here for you in creating that stable, nurturing environment for yourself to feel loved, to feel appreciated, to feel cared for, and give you that sense of personal stability to then go out in the world and express. Here's another way to think about it. Think of yourself as a plant, and you are a house plant, okay? You're a little seed and someone wants to grow you in their home, your flower or whatnot, or maybe some herbs. They take the seed, they start to grow the seed, they germinate it, and then they intend to put that seed in some soil so that it can continue to grow. And it's going to remain in that soil for the remainder of its existence, its life, right? So the 4th house represents the soil that this plant is planted into. It also represents the elements of air, the surrounding environment, the amount of light that the plant has access to versus how much it needs, the proper humidity, and you could whittle this down to all the specifics, you know what I mean? But all of these energies represent your 4th house, at least in terms of the realm that you are nurtured within, or that you nurture yourself with. And the quality of the soil that you're using is directly related to the health of the plant and ultimately how it represents itself in maturity. Is it weak or is it robust? All of these elements represent what goes into nurturing a plant to be its best self. And that's what you can consider the realm of the 4th house to be for yourself, and then also for your family, because your family is incorporated in this house and in this realm as well, because the family that you have is what you're born into, or the family environment that you have is what you're born into, and that's one of your very first nurturing environments, atmospheres, surroundings, situations, all of that kind of stuff. This full moon is in Cancer, And all the while, the sun is reaching the end of its transit through Sagittarius. So even more emphasis on the Sagittarian energy. What I'm seeing here with the with the sun transiting through Sagittarius and the moon being in Cancer, there is a level of your soul reflecting all of the things that you're experiencing and what you've been learning, or what potentially you could learn during this time period, during this whole Venus transit, okay? Allow the Sagittarian energies to boost this fire. Like, I'm literally seeing your soul becoming ablaze with everything that you're learning and experiencing, all the energy that entails, and your soul illuminating it so that you can see it. And with the moon being in Cancer, which is again ruler of the 4th house, you have a chance to reconstruct your sense of your nurturing environment within, what nurtures you, what allows you to feel comfortable and safe, and then to thus express yourself out in the world. Take what it is that you're learning during this transit, allow this full moon to illuminate this within you, and then allow the moon in Cancer to help you reset your subconscious structure with this new learned experience woven into it. So moving right along here, we have the very last epic energy of this Venus transit. Venus is going to be stationing direct on January 28th of 2022. All right, so Venus begins this stationing direct with a conjunction with Mars. And this conjunction lasts the duration of this transit. So with Venus conjuncting with Mars here, there is a blending of your receptivity and your sense of receptivity and your sense of action. There's also a blending between your feminine side and your masculine side. So if you really worked on this, if you really used everything that's been happening here over this transit to the best of your ability, okay, for your highest good, by the end of all of this, you could find a fusion of your masculine and feminine energies within, especially with this full moon in Cancer that helps you to reshape your personally nurturing environment. This is really a time where the bond with yourself between masculine and feminine energy could really be strengthened. And everything that you've experienced and the subsequent things that you have learned from that experience can now really be put into place with this fusion of the masculine and the feminine, which when brought together, the masculine pollinates or seeds the realm of the feminine, and from there, new birth and new life can be grown. So this is a really beautiful time. This is a really beautiful time of synthesis, of taking everything that you learned throughout this transit in your interpersonal relationships and your relationship with your values and abundance, and really start to create something new surrounding it, all right? Now, even though it may seem that we've gone backwards or regressed when it comes to our relationships and all that stuff, everything that Venus represents, if you've played your cards right throughout this, you could enter into a period of a new sense of unity with yourself, and also a new sense of unity within your relationships. So say you have a strong masculine and feminine relationship between you and a romantic partner. One of you brings more of the feminine side to the situation, the other brings more of the masculine side to the situation, regardless of gender. You may find that you two are more able to bond, to come back together, to work together to fix the things or the discrepancies that have come out throughout this transit. Now, one thing to keep in mind throughout this is that Pluto conjuncts with Mercury at the time of this direct So Venus and Mars are conjunct, but then Pluto and Mercury are conjunct. So again, there goes that energy of what needs to transform, the big change. With the conjunction between Pluto and Mercury here, you may have another period of having a deeper understanding, or being able to come to a deeper understanding of what is needing to be changed and transformed for you, which then also aids to the conjunction between Mars and Venus in the fusing together the creative ability of striking change in your life. At the very end of all of this, and this is really interesting, you guys, at the very end of, well, the last thing to take note of, as Venus makes her station of direct and starts to go direct back through Sagittarius and eventually into Capricorn, we have we have a stellium again between Mars, Venus, and Pluto. And this all happens at 30 degrees of Sagittarius on March 2nd. Okay? So, this could be the final big blowout of this transit. Pluto may be coming through as the final exam or the final review of this time period before Venus and Mars, by the way, make their transit into Capricorn, which then takes us into the realm of practical application. So, in the conjunction between Pluto and Mercury, there is an expansion of intellectual topics. There is an understanding or a stark awareness at this point of what can be changed and how you guys can communicate about that. And then finally, Pluto meets up with Mars and Venus. And so that gives an extra push towards this change, towards this needed recreation of your reality. And so then, as time moves on, Venus will continue to move throughout Sagittarius, which is still helping you to keep this expansive mindset and the philosophies surrounding these changes that need to be made in your life. And then by the end of all of this, Venus will be moving into Capricorn. So you'll be able to really take some practical action when it comes to enforcing or realizing this change, okay? So like I said, throughout this transit, there may be some moments for you, some like serious like WTAF moments. What the actual fuck is happening here? And you may seem like you're regressing. You may seem like things are going backwards. You may find, or it may seem that you have re-entered into some situations that you had vowed that you would never get back into. But the universe is setting this up for you to get back into those situations so that you can have a deeper understanding of things, so that you can enact change into your life. Guys, really try and go with the flow with all of this. Just take it as it comes. Don't try to fight against it. Don't try to push. Don't try to move too quickly. Really take all of the time that you have between November 2nd of 2021 and March 6th, okay? March 6th of 2022 to really get down to the nitty-gritty of all of this. Roll up your sleeves, pull up your big boy pants or your big girl panties, and really work. If you really do the work here during this time, keep in mind, throughout this time, Saturn is in its home sign of Capricorn. So if you really do the work and gaining the deeper understandings here with intentions to put better structure into place by the time you reach the end of this transit, then things could really work out to be absolutely beautiful for you by the time Venus enters into Capricorn, okay? Where Saturn will still be, all right? This is all about refocusing, reworking, rebuilding, reconstructing your structure when it comes to your interpersonal relationships and the realm of your monetary value and your regular, just your physical, mental, or emotional values. So there we have it, guys. That concludes our conversation here about this lovely motion of Venus in our sky. I hope this was helpful for you all. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. If you want to let me know how this resonated with you, if you want to come back later and let me know how this resonates for you, that would be awesome. Definitely do that in the comment section down below. Anybody that would like to get a session with me in terms of looking at how Venus could be affecting you over this period on a personal level, definitely send me an email. The link can be found in the description box below. I'm sending you all so much love. I wish and hope and pray that this transit of Venus turns out in your favor without too much hassle. And I look forward to connecting with you all again very, very soon. Yeah? Fantastic. Bye.